I'm a utility guy at New American Media. So I just go where I'm told to go, and give me an assignment, I go and cover it. And now I'm doing some work with the Beat Within, which is the youth outreach into the detention facility. So we have a Beat Within in Washington. It's a writing workshop. So if I'm limping, it's because last night the workshop, we ended up playing football inside a gymnasium on a very hard floor. So Aaron asked me to introduce Dr. Spriggs, who, if he looked like he was being distracted when we were introducing ourselves, it's because he was pulling up his notes so I could introduce him properly and formally with this amazing technology that we now have. So I appreciate him doing that, because what I was going to say is simply this, is that I've heard Dr. Spriggs on several occasions. Williams College grad? I know a little bit about what year? 77. Came out 77? Youngster. So Williams College, and where did you do the PhD? Wisconsin. In Wisconsin. Okay. But I heard Dr. Spriggs present with another economist probably last year. It was on the history of what has happened to the African American community in terms of economic development and employment from King, Dr. Martin Luther King, moving forward. And it was really whether King's vision had really been accomplished from that time, and basically with his economist mindset, he was deconstructing the numbers so that you could see, quite frankly, not a lot has happened in terms of progress, as I recall, in terms of actually measuring, even though we've achieved other kinds of social gains. And I'm sure you'll feel free to correct me if I misspoke. But sometimes when we're reporting as ethnic writers on people who are leaders in their field, we kind of fall into the same trap of saying that this individual is one of the brightest minority economists in the country. And so what I take pains to do many times is say, quite frankly, Dr. Spriggs is one of the brightest economists in the country. And that's really how it should be qualified and dealt with, because when we start going down the path of trying to figure out who is the leading minority, this or that, it's a no-win proposition. This is a brilliant guy, as is Tony Robinson, who I've known for 20, 30 years now. And I've learned so much from him, and I've learned a lot from Dr. Spriggs in the short time that I have been associated with him. And that's just from listening. So this has gone dark already. So which button do I push? This one right here? Okay. So how do I scroll? Just roll the button. Wow, this is amazing. You can see I'm really, where I'm there with this video stuff. Okay. So what I want to say, this is, here's the formal introduction. Dr. Spriggs is now the Assistant Secretary for Policy at the U.S. Department of Labor, as our co-panelist fellow said, under Hilda Solis. And he was nominated by President Barack Obama. He's Assistant Secretary for Policy, and that's one of the overlooked components, I think, as reporters when we do these stories. Is a lot of times we look at the facts, but we don't look at the policy underlying what's driving it. So sometimes we're holding people accountable for things that are not supported by policy. So he's only recently confirmed. It was confirmed by the Senate on October 21st. Dr. Spriggs is a recognized expert in labor policy and research. For over 25 years, he has worked as an educator, researcher, and advocate for working families and low-income communities. He was actually born in Washington, D.C. I didn't know that. Damn, another D.C. boy done good, man. I'm proud of you. He attended public elementary schools in the district, and in the midst of the civil rights era, spurring his commitment to public service after graduating cum laude from Williams College in 1977. He attended the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where he earned a PhD in economics and served as co-president of the American Federation of Teachers, local chapter 3220. At the time of his nomination, Dr. Spriggs was chair of the department and a professor of economics at Howard University. post he had held since 2005, and that's kind of where my intersection was. I knew he had gone to Howard to teach, and also that he was on the board of the Economic Policy Institute, which is a resource, by the way, that I recommend that all of you also put into your database, the Economic Policy Institute. So when we were talking about speakers who could come, I had suggested Dr. Spriggs as someone who could speak from the perspective of an economics professor at Howard, past experience in other iterations, but also who was on the board of the Economic Policy Institute. So unbeknownst to me, I didn't know him, so I didn't follow your career, that he was now at the U.S. Department of Labor. So I'm going to cut it off here so we have time to actually hear his presentation, because he does have a car waiting. Let me rephrase that. He does have to leave at 1, and he wants to have time for Q&A. So I want to back up and let him dig in so that you guys have a chance to take your best shot. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks. From a fellow Williamsville, actual DC native.
DC native.
All of you want to report on where the recovery has gone, and it's a very difficult case because of the severity of the recession. This is the most severe recession other than the Great Depression. The financial crisis that took place in 2007 was a tipping point that signaled the downfall of the debt run-up that took place over the last 8 years. So if you put it in perspective, we had an 8-year period in which the economy generated no new net jobs, in which the average income of American workers fell, and over an 8-year period fueled almost exclusively by an increased debt level on the part of the household sector. So the financial crisis is not simply the unwinding of a bubble, but an unwinding of that debt load that was taken on by the household sector, clearly an unsustainable debt level, and clearly a bubble in housing, which, except for Dean Baker, who just walked in, nobody else predicted it. I think it should serve as a lesson that markets can fail, that a consensus can develop in the marketplace, and that consensus can be wrong. And like I said, other than Dean Baker, nobody else was saying that there was a housing bubble. So I think when the smoke clears from all of this, there's going to be somebody, young kid who's getting a PhD right now in economics, who's going to write about the lost decade, and will point out that actually was all aberration. We'll rewrite our textbooks about how to think about the markets once again. But the problem confronting President Obama when he took office and the nation was that we were losing jobs at a record and precipitous rate, finally culminating with us losing 700,000 jobs a month at one point. I do not think that it is just thin air to say that the administration's aggressive actions to pass immediately a stimulus package has stemmed the tide of that loss. Now we are not gaining jobs, but the economy is not hemorrhaging jobs anymore. And in order to dig our way out, at some point we are going to pass through these points where you're going to have declining jobs, and the fact that that the job losses are happening at a declining rate is a positive sign that perhaps we are in fact moving in the correct direction. The economy in fact shrank at a 6.4% rate 6 months ago, and we found out that in the third quarter the economy actually turned around and did show some signs of growth, although at a rate of 3 and 4%. So when you take the deep hole that the economy was put in, you take that growth factor, that change from being down in the hole 6 up above the hole 3, that 9 percentage point change is the greatest change since the 1980s. So clearly the economy is not where it is supposed to be.